Hi, I'm Ahava Leibtag. I'm joined today by my good friends, Lori Albert and Johanna Webb from UMass Memorial Health to talk about marketing, the hottest topic today, recruitment, and breaking down silos. You've got questions? We've got your answers. Let's get started. I'll start with you, Lori. What are you most excited about in healthcare marketing today?
I think what everyone's talking about is AI. It is helping me streamline a lot of my work. And for areas that I'm not a specialist in, unlike you, it's definitely helping me. And I think our organization too is using it a lot for patient, home care and,
Mhm.
for our patients home care and a lot of, using the new technology in the clinical space, which I'm not as familiar with. But I definitely think even a lot of our marketing automation software, we work with
That's very,
WebMD, they're really, using it a lot. So it's kind of I remember I'm older than both of you, but I remember when the internet first started and we're like, what's the World Wide Web and how do you use it? And like I feel like this is the new thing. Like how to use it and we're just gonna grow and learn,
yeah,
learn as
yeah.
every day,
Yeah,
it'll
I
be
feel yeah, there have been three stages of my career: Web 2.0, uh, social media, and now
Mhm.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, how
yeah.
about you, Johanna? What are you most excited about?
I think I'm most excited about where marketing sits within most healthcare organizations now, or at least within our own. I feel like we really have a seat at the right tables now. We're getting pulled into conversations. We're partnering with business leads versus clinical leads to get in early on a lot of our strategic initiatives. So I think it's given us a voice, and we're really able to demonstrate the value that marketing teams can really bring to some of these organizational priorities early in the game versus after, the plans have been really thought out and well baked, and just being able to chime in and bring that value early on. I think that's probably what's most exciting because I've been able to see the evolution even since I started at UMass Memorial Health, where really partnering with business and operations and not just our subject matter experts and taking direction at that level.
Yeah, that's fantastic to hear. So I have to tell you that I hear two sides of that story very often.
Mhm.
The first thing I hear is that marketing's getting does not have the right seats at the table.
Mm,
And now
mhm.
strategy's coming in over marketing and the CMO no longer has direct access to the
Mm,
CEO. But then on the other hand, I'm hearing marketing has to morph into customer experience. It has to get
mhm.
more involved in operations. We have to be able to sort of set patient, caregiver, stakeholder experience.
Right.
You're lucky that at UMass you're experiencing that. What would you tell somebody who's having trouble getting heard, who feels like maybe they don't have access to the business leads or the doctors override the business leads? Have you ever come into, you said you see the evolution, but are you still dealing with that and how are you getting around it?
Yeah, I mean, we always deal with it to some extent because depending on who you're working with, right? They may not have, I think there are some clinical areas that have a great relationship with their business partners, and there are others that aren't quite as closely connected. So you're definitely going to have more success when you're working with a service line that is relying heavily on their business partners versus those service lines that operate in a more of a clinical bubble. So that can be challenging. What's nice at our organization is that a lot of our business partners oversee multiple areas, so they kind of help advocate for us in pulling us in to some of those other service lines that maybe we're not as involved as we need to be. So again, it's all about that relationship piece, and if you can build the relationships at the strategy level, and it will kind of organically start to happen a little bit more. But getting your foot in the door and having a business partner that understands the value that your team brings, they're just going to echo that and amplify that through other areas in the organization. So build those relationships at the highest level, one or two, and you'll see organically it's going to grow.
Yeah. Yeah, we're struggling, like, some of our service because I oversee service lines. So, like, some of our service lines are there,
Hmm.
some are easier than others. It's weird, like, everyone is different, but, some of my team members, they're really trying like, they're struggling, so they're really trying to find who are those right people. Like, we want the right people at the table who can help make decisions, who can help sway
Mhm.
the clinical side and understand the operation side and can be those people. And we're a system too. So it makes it more challenging because we're not
Right.
operationally systematized. We have
Right.
different entities that operate differently with different clinical leads. So it's like, okay, who's that person at, Milford Regional? So it's a struggle and
Right.
but it's
And
definitely we notice the benefit. So it's
a
helpful.
lot of times we know all of the leads at each individual entity, and we're connecting those dots for people that
Yeah, they don't
that
know.
they don't know each other. And
Yeah.
so we're bringing people together a lot of the time, but, it's great to kinda see everybody evolve along the way, and it's usually those service lines that we haven't had a lot of interaction with over recent years that aren't quite up to speed on this new way of really helping them achieve their business goals.
Yeah. It's interesting. So, foundationally, I think everything that you're saying makes sense to me. What
Mhm.
I've noticed about building relationships is that the more you know about their business and the more data you bring them to show them that you know about their business, the better
Yeah.
chance you have of starting to build that relationship. I think about that all the time. When I was a freelance writer, I used to go in and I remember, like, I learned to pronounce the word otolaryngology by pressing the button, like, on the computer, otolaryngology, but I could pronounce it, and so right away, the ENT physician had
Mhm.
much more trust in me because it was clear that I had prepared, and
Yeah.
he was a great advocate because he kept telling people all over that first hospital I worked with, "You should work with Ahava, she writes great content," and I think that that's how you know you really built the relationship is when
Right.
people recommend you to other people, that's
Yeah.
how you know it's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I was at a fantastic session where you presented on a recruitment strategy you developed with your clinical and human resources team.
Mhm.
This is a huge pressing problem for everyone.
Mhm.
Recruiting, retention, getting the message out, healthcare providers in general, not just doctors, but I think almost at every level,
Oh,
they're
yeah.
seeing a huge recruitment challenge. So, talk to me about how that campaign even got started and where you said, okay, we need to put our feet on the gas here.
Yeah, so it was interesting because it was probably in around 2022. So really, like now we're really feeling the effects of COVID and burnout, right? Like it's finally caught up with the organization. So it was a workforce staffing crisis. Like it was not good. And to compensate for that, the shortage of staff, we were obviously investing really heavily in traveling nurses. So not only did we have enough, we did not have enough staff to care for the patients, right? And then we were paying more for the staff that we did have. So I was like, oh God,
Perfect
perfect storm.
storm.
Yeah, totally. So
Plus, we're 40 minutes outside of Boston. So,
right.
our competitive market is just
Yes.
Yeah.
saturated and, like, super popular, right? Like,
Yeah, that's a
great
great
hospitals,
point.
so
Yeah, super competitive
yeah.
landscape for us in the region that we are in. So, our HR team actually had taken upon themselves to launch a campaign with a very trusted partner, actually A&K. So huge shout out to A&K, Adams and Knight for anyone that is not familiar with them. They were working directly with Adams and Knight on a recruitment marketing campaign, which is great. But it didn't take too long before they started waving the white flag. Like it was just too much for our HR team to manage an external, significant investment into an external marketing campaign, on top of getting the job done of getting these new hires in through the pipeline and onto the front line. So they really did come to us looking for some help, and we were like, absolutely, like let us jump all over this opportunity. So that's kind of how it started. And, like I said, they're not our HR team, they're not seasoned marketers. So we had some optimizations that we needed to make to the campaign pretty quickly. And so we really focused on like, let's stabilize the efforts that we have going on at the moment and then take a step back and see what could we potentially do a little bit differently. What should we be thinking about? To Lori's earlier point, we're a healthcare system. Our HR team at the time was not really charged with overseeing all HR functions of every entity in the system.
Okay, gotcha.
So they were only approaching it from the perspective of those entities that they managed. But we knew like the whole system was struggling. So we needed to make sure that we had a fair and equitable plan that all of our entities could benefit from. So that's really how it got started. I don't know, Lori, if there's anything that you think I missed in that
Well, I
description.
just want to, and Lord,
Yeah.
maybe you can answer this question because I'm listening to you talk, Johanna. And one of the things I'm finding really fascinating is that in order for anybody, any organization in any industry in the world, we have got to break down workflow silos because
Mm,
we're not going to be able to produce content or produce
mhm,
experiences for people if we don't do a better job of working together. So you said they raised the white flag.
mhm.
Lori, from your perspective, why do you think they came to you? Like, how did that silo get broken?
Yeah, I think they were just, overwhelmed. They're not marketing people, right? And we have a relationship with our TA team. So, they have been working with the agency probably a year and a half, and they're like, you know what? Now we're in a crisis mode. We're
Mm.
too busy, and we need to focus on what we do best, which is hire people. Why aren't we tapping into our marketing team? And I don't know if they just never thought that this was something we could help with. You don't think of marketing or advertising with recruitment a lot. I mean, you should, but I don't. They were using Indeed
Sensationally, you
and
don't.
typical platforms, right? And so I think that they were
That
like,
I mean, that was to your point,
here we are.
that was, like, the breaking point of the silo,
Yeah.
right? Like, as soon as they came to us, it was like, "Okay, now the opportunities are here, and we can take advantage of them."
Right, exactly. They joke around about good fences make good neighbors, and I
Mhm.
think a lot of times in organizations, people are like toddlers, they're parallel playing, but
Yeah.
when they start needing each other, that's when you really see those partnerships and that play develop where,
Yeah.
it's collaborative play and it's not just, you know, sitting there each playing with their blocks.
Yeah, and
Right.
this was super collaborative, we can talk about, how we structured our check-ins and our meetings, and they were as invested as we were. I
Well,
mean,
that's great.
which was awesome because a lot of times with our clients, you're lucky if you get a monthly meeting with them and a check-in, but we
Mhm.
did weekly check-ins, and we brought bigger teams in, and, it was just, they were invested in their time with us, and every week we talked strategy and optimizations and, budgets and everything like that. So it was really, really collaborative. But
That's
how we
yeah, no, no,
structured
no,
it.
no,
But
I think that's great. So let's talk about that. What was different about the way this campaign was built? And I think from this perspective of the story that you're telling me and what I remember about the presentation, you came into in the middle of a strategy. And so you had
Mhm.
to figure out how to adapt that strategy for what they really needed. But you
Right.
just talked a little bit about that cross-functional partnership. People listen to these podcasts and these videos and they're like, how do I get better at my job? So you talked about how you broke down that silo, but what I want to know is how did you see that end result in why this was successful? A strategic partnership makes sense, but you didn't come in at the strategic partnership level.
Right.
You came in at the like, let me save you level. So
Right.
how did you keep your eye on the end goal and make sure that it didn't feel like you were fixing the situation, but that you were actually helping them?
It was I think we were slow. We knew what we needed to do, right? We needed to create a truly system campaign that was reflective of, because there was also a little bit of a disconnect with the campaign they initially launched with our branding, right? So we needed to pull it along from a branding perspective. We needed to make sure that we were representing all of our entities. So we slowly started to make kind of baby steps within their existing campaign so that we could get through the duration of that campaign and then almost relaunch, right? With an even more evolved campaign that ultimately was where we knew we needed to be. Um, some of those baby steps included creating a standalone, like, stopgap landing page for that represented all of our entities because, like I said at the time, our HR functions didn't necessarily manage the hiring operations for all. So if you clicked through to the job board where they were actually receiving applications, only a handful of entity job opportunities were listed there, not all. So we knew that we needed to redirect traffic, right, to
Right.
make sure that people who wanted to work at XYZ hospital would be able to see the opportunities available there. And then ultimately, it was definitely an iterative campaign where we just kept evolving and working towards getting closer to that end state where we knew we needed to be.
But don't you think every campaign should be run like that? Like, that's the whole
Yeah.
point.
yeah,
We can't just launch it and then just hope for the best. You gotta
Yeah.
watch it, nurture it, figure out to
Right.
refine it. Yeah.
Right, and nurture those stakeholder relationships along the way, right? So Lori mentioned having, frequent check-ins. We had weekly meetings with the VP of talent acquisition. We really wanted to make sure because their priorities were shifting and changing constantly, and we needed to make sure we could respond to them as much as possible. Um, and then we also needed to make sure that even outside of those conversations, our own team was working together and being responsive, because the other piece that was really different about this campaign is we had a much deeper partnership with our internal communications teams, because there was a lot of opportunity for referring caregivers, who we refer to all of our employees as caregivers. So a caregiver referral program, making sure that, for any internal mobility opportunities, that those were being advertised appropriately. So we really had to partner with our internal communications teams for the development of those types of messaging and across all of our internal channels as well. So amplifying that campaign across internal channels is a little bit different than how we do a lot of our external marketing campaigns. There might be some representation, but not to the extent that this campaign was.
Yeah, like all of the collateral was redone, all of the pieces that our talent acquisition team uses, they were
Hmm.
all rebranded and we worked with them on the right content. We gave them templates so that they could create a piece for a CT tech versus a respiratory tech. And our campaign was all about we hire you and it's you, the caregiver, and we want you as who you are, what you bring to the
Right.
table. So we did caregiver videos and vignettes, and our internal communications team just leveraged those. They interviewed like everything we do externally, we took it another notch and applied it internally too, to because we have 14,000 caregivers. We're the biggest hospital and the biggest employer in our region. So like
Hmm.
marketing
A lot of
externally, we
people.
need to also market internally because those are our patients as well.
Sure. I also think something that you said that was really interesting was handing them templates, figuring out their workflow. You basically embedded yourselves
Yeah.
to their
Mm,
team.
Yeah.
And that I think is probably where a lot of the success came from. It was
Right.
almost like you taught them how to do
we
this.
made it easy. Yeah.
Yes.
A
Yes.
100%. I mean, we really had to, at one point we did kind of like a branding 101, a campaign 101 with the HR hiring managers, because they're out there communicating, sharing information, making sure that they were using our name correctly, making sure that they were using campaign assets correctly. Like all of this stuff, we really needed to kind of serve up to them in a way that was going to make it really easy for them to work with. So scripting, making sure job descriptions had some uniformity to them, even within Workday. I mean, we really had to push to say, tell me everything you're doing, because that's going to help us identify all of the opportunities that we can plug in and really help them and figure out here's your needs and here's how the campaign can help solve some of those needs.
Even down to like their LinkedIn profiles. We
Yeah.
help them get them creative backgrounds or, profile
Gotcha.
photos and copy. Like
Yeah.
we would see things and be like, okay, we need to loop in with the
Yeah.
team and,
Yeah.
try to
Yeah.
understand how they
The
work.
devil's in the details.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And marketing knows that better than anybody. And I
Oh,
think
yeah.
that sometimes we have a sensitivity to those things and other people don't because their brains are different. And that's why they didn't go into marketing and,
Right.
everybody
Yeah. And you
involved. But
can't blame them.
Yeah.
They're good at what they do.
exactly.
I would never,
Exactly. Right.
you know.
Right. I couldn't hire people.
Hopefully you can.
I've hired great people. Although I do have a joke. I always say, if you've never made a bad hire, you hired one person yesterday. So, what advice do you have for marketing teams who are being called to help in recruitment campaigns? And I think you just gave us a lot of really good advice.
Yeah.
I think what I would actually love to hear from you is what let's say a marketer is watching a recruitment campaign and they've had a little bit to do with HR and they have kind of a good relationship with them, but it's not really cemented in stone. And they're watching it and they're like,
Mhm.
this is not going great. How would you approach them? What would you tell somebody let's say you were at Neshco and somebody's
Mhm.
asking you like, wow, that was a great presentation. I have the same problem, but I don't know how to get them in the game.
Yeah.
What's your advice?
Um, I think it's really understanding who all of the stakeholders are when it comes to these recruitment campaigns and making sure that, again, so much of what we do comes back to relationships. Having those relationships where you can approach someone to say, like, I see a ton of opportunity to do XYZ, right? I see, or understanding, having those conversations with HR leadership to say, what are your goals? If you're not already plugged into those conversations, what are your hiring goals, and provide some concrete examples of how you can support those hiring goals through paid marketing. I mean, you have to be able to connect their goals with your tactics, because I think so much of people outside of marketing, they need to see the tangible connection between the work that marketing does and what they're trying to achieve. So I think that would probably be my biggest piece of advice. Um, if you are able to get going in some of this work, I think my next piece of advice is not only identify your stakeholders, but understand what level of stakeholder they are, right? Because sometimes you got to be careful with a very complex
Oh,
organization.
yeah.
I joke all the time. The hardest part of my job is just understanding who I need to talk to. Like that's the
We
hardest part.
always we always ask our clients, "Just please give us an org chart."
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know, I know, and understand, like, there are certain stakeholders that just need to feel engaged and provide input, right? And there's other stakeholders that you're gonna need their approval and their sign off on something. So
Right.
understanding the difference between those levels of stakeholders, I think, is very helpful in actually moving the project along. Otherwise, you're gonna end up with way too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Anything to add to that, Lori?
No, I mean, everyone has an opinion and historically, so many people had to weigh in. So we were really trying to we have to move this along. So
Mhm,
who are those right decision makers? I would also say that, recruitment advertising, this campaign, it's fun. Like
Mhm.
when Johanna's like, we're gonna help with recruitment. I'm like, don't they just call a recruiting agency and do Indeed and Glassdoor? Like, I didn't know what the opportunities were. And like we did a full on like a regular consumer marketing
But
campaign.
it's a branding campaign,
It
let's
was
be
a
yeah,
branding.
honest. It's a
yeah,
branding campaign, and I think that there's the opportunity. The
mhm,
opportunity is
Yeah,
to get the brand out there, but in a way that even a consumer will notice and
exactly.
say
It's
like,
fun and
"Oh,
engaging and
yeah,
yeah,
like
and I
it
think I think
yeah,
our consumers like to see because our campaign was very much about celebrating our caregivers and, really understanding how important authenticity is, and so for our patients to see that that's how their healthcare organization is viewing and treating their employees,
yeah,
I think was a huge
absolutely.
opportunity.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's great."
Yep.
Well, I'm sorry I've been mispronouncing your name the whole time, Johanna,
No,
but
great.
but Lori and Johanna, it was great to have you. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you to our viewers for joining in. I hope you got the answer you need today. If you have a burning question, please put it in the comments or email me at ahava.leibtag@ahamediagroup.com. We really love it when you comment and share. It really makes it worthwhile for us to do all this hard work to make sure that we're sharing the best insights from the industry. So thank you so much for joining us.